Ta-da! New ReCreator video, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about my most recent work with the ReCreator Colorizer. To start, let's talk some background. The Colorizer is not a new invention by me. In fact, Josh from ReCreator3D created it, and the process of coloring filament with markers has been attempted for a long time. The first that I'm aware of is Chep with a video from about 8 years ago. His video colors the filament by running it directly through the marker's filter. The upside is that it gets a really consistent hue on the filament once it prints, but it does require destroying the marker. Next is Make Anything's Sharpie Blender. This uses a very similar method to the Colorizer, but is meant to sit flush with the printer's extruder, thus feeding directly into the hot end. Make Anything included multiple versions that can use different numbers of markers for different color hues. Both videos will be linked in the description, and I highly recommend checking them out. So with that, the history's out of the way, and I want to talk about what I'm adding to this project. The big difference between past methods and my methods is the material. Since I'm using ReCreator PET, the melt temperature will be much higher than previously attempted. This is very important, so remember this for later. One of the downsides of the ReCreator is that the filament comes out the exact color of a recycled bottle. In the United States, colorings in bottles have been slowly phased out. In fact, historically green Sprite bottles are now becoming clear. This is why myself and others in the community have pushed for coloring filaments with an external dye. Additionally, this method allows for much more customization as you can make the color blend yourself, another point which will be very important later on in the video. Moving forward, let's discuss how to use the Colorizer. The Colorizer is meant to be bolted onto 2020 aluminum rail, the kind used in most printers. In fact, if you're using a ReCreator Mark V, you can bolt the Colorizer inline and have PET colorized as it cools. This is how Josh originally designed the Colorizer, and how most users have used it in the past. If you're using a Mark VI, the small size does not allow for inline coloring, which means you need to color afterwards or make modifications to the unit. Despite the fact that I used the Mark V, I opted to color afterwards for two specific reasons. One, this allowed me to better control batches since I am often limited in how much ReCreator PET I have at one given time. Two, it simplifies PET pultrusion so that I can be more efficient when I create. This lets me split up my batches so that I can make all of my filament at once and then color when I need it. As a side note, colorizing after pultrusion is necessary if you are using something to join multiple filament rolls, with something like the meld, for instance. The join will mess with marker ink and make a weird section of color, thus making colorization after joining a much better option. This is because of how ink breaks down at high heat. Speaking of which, now comes the two main points of difference that I mentioned earlier, temperature and color blend. As you are most likely aware, PET requires a much higher melt temperature than PLA, TPU, or even PETG. This melt temperature means that the color dyes in certain markers will break down in different ways. Currently, as of the making of this video, I have tested 6 colors and a special blend. These are red, black, blue, light green, and green. Out of these colors, light blue ended up being the best looking. It had little degradation in the hot end as it printed and came out looking amazing. This color was used to make some of the snowflake vases and the Gura hair tie I showed off at MRF 2024, which you can find in this video. The main reason it looked faint in some of the footage is because this is a non-traditional Sharpie color, thus I only had one marker. To try and mitigate the effect that one marker would have on the dull color, I made multiple passes through the Colorizer. A similar method is what I used on the next color, light green. This color was used to make the Fauna sapling planter, which I showed off at 3D Printopia 2024, a video for which you can find up top in the iCard. I struggled with this color for a similar reason to the light blue, since I only had one marker, and since I also had 3D Printopia coming up, I kind of rushed myself through this project. This is an issue I think could be nearly completely fixed by joining the filament with something like the meld. The similarity between the two of these filaments is that I only had one marker to make these, and so you can see that the hue is a lot less uniform between these, and there's more of a jump in color where you'll get a lot of color all at once and then it will slowly die off and then slowly pick up again. Again, I think this would be mitigated if I ran an entire roll through that didn't stop at each of these separate ReCreator filament rolls. The next color I tested was blue. This color ended up printing fairly well. The blue color does break down a little bit in the hot end. Specifically, it comes out a little bit purple. It's very hard to see this on camera and even in some prints in person. That's why I feel this color is an overall great success. I used this color on the snowflake vases and the Gura hair tie I showed off at MRF 2024. I didn't do much testing with the next color because I didn't have much of an application for it, but I also tested black. This color worked much better than I thought it would. I assumed that some of the darker pigments would break down and give the black an overall purple hue, like when black marker dries up or like what happened with the blue Sharpie. However, this black came out super rich, and it's one of the hardest of the group to tell that it's not just a glass PLA or something. I'm very happy with how the black turned out, and I can't wait to use it on more projects. I used it in this video on the unfinished Mario mushroom as the color of the eyes. Now I'd like to discuss the two colors which performed the worst during testing. First is red. Red seemed to break down in the hot end pretty substantially. When heated, the red pigment gives way to an orangish hue. I tested this on 2 models and found that the issue did not go away, so I believe this is not mitigatable like the decolorization of the blue marker. I used this color in my unfinished Mario mushroom and the shades for my Burnus glasses. The latter of which I feel the orangey color actually kind of benefited me as it fit more with the way that the Burnus glasses are designed in-game and in videos. The final color and the quote-unquote worst, in my opinion, is green. I had really wanted green to work the best as it is a color that I use in a lot of my builds, however it breaks down substantially in the hot end. The resulting color is more of a dark green / green blue look, which is not bad, but not the same as what it looks like when you write on paper with it. I only use this in one project, and even then it's kind of like a half project, that being the unfinished Mario mushroom build. I believe when I reattempt this project, I'm going to use what little green filament I have from actual green bottles. Overall, while I counted the last 2 colors as failures, I still think they performed way above what I was expecting. The reason I even hesitate to call them true failures is because of color blending, which I'll now discuss. Color blending is something Make Anything highlighted in his video, but I'll talk a little bit about my experience with it in this video. Color blending happens when you take multiple colors and mix them together to create a new color. Pretty obviously. I had one model where I tested this and it came out wonderful. As I was making the snowflake vases, my one light blue marker began to die. To combat this, I ran the filament through with a regular blue marker to add some color. What surprised me is that the 2 colors seemingly mixed together to create this royal blue color, which is my absolute favorite by far. This has inspired me to test more blends to see what could make up for color degradation in the hot end. I think this is how I could make even better greens and reds specifically. My current hypothesis is that darker pigments are weaker at high temperatures and thus break down into lighter shades. When you add a lighter shade with a darker shade, i.e. blue and light blue in the case of this video, the 2 meet in the middle making a new color. Again, in this case, royal blue. I want to do more testing in the future on color blending because what I did in this video yielded such positive results. In conclusion, I'm very happy with the results of my Colorizer efforts. Through all my testing, I have not had a single filament clog, which myself and others have experienced with other coloring methods, mainly acrylics or other dyes. Additionally, the Sharpie does not appear to bleed or drip when drying, which means an entire roll can be colorized and spooled without having to worry about longevity and reuse. You probably noticed that the testing while on multiple projects is still rather small. What I want to do is highlight my method and inspire more people to try coloring PET, specifically ReCreator PET. I will continue to test these blends as I go. Particularly, I want to test more unique Sharpie colors to see which works best. Additionally, I am working on a full video on the meld, so I can make testing much more efficient on my end. I plan to release a full meld video sometime in the future where I will have a section updating on Colorizer shenanigans. But I have to admit, this video is only one part of a lot of larger projects that I'm currently working on. I mean, making my filament colored for each project is cool because it avoids having to post-process your prints, and I mean, Wouldn't multiple colors also lead to multicolor printing? But hey, that's for another time. Thank you all very much for watching. If you want to see more of my 3D printing videos, check out the playlist linked here. Also, I haven't shouted this out in a full video before, but I stream regularly each week, and I have been increasing the amount of maker-centered streams that I have. I've done a ton of Onshape 3D modeling, where I aim to show others how to use the software in creative, unique ways. If you haven't already, please check those out. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you all very much for watching. Bye-bye!